last night bird we've seen. We're about 150 or 200 yards from the site. Everything else is just deathly calm. There's no doubt about it. There's some type of strange flashing red light ahead.
It's yellow.
I saw a yellow tinge in it, too. Weird. It appears to be maybe moving a little bit this way. It's brighter than it has been.
Yellow.
It's coming this way. It is definitely coming this way. Pieces of it are shooting off. There is no doubt about it. This is weird.
December 1980, Rendlesham Forest in Suffolk, England. At the time, the United States Air Force was using a base just outside the forest. On the 26th of December, servicemen on patrol would claim to see lights in the sky that descended into the forest. That night, going to investigate what was thought to be a downed aircraft, it would turn into a close encounter with a strange object, and would become the most famous UFO case in the history of the United Kingdom. I feel like I don't talk about the UK enough. The last time I talked about a story from the UK, it was last year with the video Alien Big Cats. And here I am again, talking about aliens in the UK. But to be fair, the last one wasn't about furry cuteness from outer space, but types of felines that aren't supposed to be there. And this time, I'm actually talking about aliens. Funny thing is, the majority of people in this story are American, because we had a base there. Technically, the Royal Air Force owned the base, but Americans were stationed there. And that was the setting for this story. Why was the US Air Force in the UK to begin with? Well, NATO. We were technically the only NATO country to not have to rebuild our cities after World War II, which kind of made the US need to step up militarily while other NATO countries rebuilt. Because, well, America. And considering the Warsaw Pact and the threat of the Soviet Union and the possibility the Cold War could turn into an actual war, the US needed a base where they could easily get to the front lines of any potential war fast. The people of the UK didn't like it though. There was this one comment I heard on the last podcast on the left episode where the common joke was the American soldiers stationed were, and I quote, overpaid, oversexed, and over here. That doesn't sound like much of an insult. Maybe it's just my Americanness coming out, but that kind of sounds more like a compliment. So the British people seem polite in their commentary of the United States. According to the same podcast, the American response to that was that the British soldiers were, and I quote, underpaid, undersexed, and under Eisenhower. It seems less like insults and more like something a child would say to piss off another child. Really quick side note. As of writing the script for this video, I became aware that Ben Kissel, who as of this writing is no longer with Last Podcast on the Left, has heavy accusations against him. Things that should be taken very seriously. That doesn't mean they are not a good source when it comes to research. I don't want to turn this into just talking about that, so I'm going to move on. Just know I support and believe Taylor Moon. I can talk about it later if you guys want, but this is not the topic of the video. The United States military occupied two bases, RAF Woodridge and RAF Bentwaters. Between the two forts was a thick forested area known as Rendlesham Forest, which is east of the town of Woodridge in Suffolk. It was at RAF Woodridge that this event takes place mostly. At 3 a.m. on December 26, 1980, a security patrol saw lights descending from the sky and into the forest. That night, pieces of a Russian satellite were seen re-entering Earth's orbit over the area, as well as a meteor, which with the Russian satellite, it just goes to prove that even in the 1980s, the Russians were really inept. But the soldiers thought it was a downed aircraft, because an aircraft was picked up on radar that night as well as heading that way. So it made sense to assume that's what it was. It was just an aircraft. Servicemen got into their jeeps and began to rush towards the forest. It wasn't long into the journey that they noticed there were no signs or sounds of a crash, so they radioed in to change the situation from a crash to a possible landing, requesting more people to back them up. But soon, the Jeeps stopped working mysteriously, and radios began to malfunction. Out of those sent out that night, only 2 would get to the area where they thought the plane landed. U.S. Air Force Airman First Class John Burroughs and U.S. Air Force Staff Sergeant Jim Peniston. They were the only 2 left to investigate. Sitting in the middle of the clearing was a small craft, 9 feet tall by 9 feet wide, which really isn't a lot of room if you think about it. If that's an alien spacecraft, That is a very tiny alien. But the craft looked metallic, with what looked like symbols carved into it. From what Peniston stated, the craft was small and triangular, and sitting on the ground. Burroughs would first state he saw the same thing, but then would later change his story that all he saw was lights. Either way, Peniston and Burroughs approached the craft slowly. Both claim as they grew closer, the air felt like it was filled with energy, like they could hear the crackling of static. As they both got closer, they both reported that it felt like it was harder to walk, like trying to walk through deep water. As they walked towards the craft, a sudden explosion of light startled them. Out of instinct, they both hit the ground thinking they were being attacked. But as soon as they stood, they realized the light was just a light. It was then that Peniston said he noticed that the craft's surface was emitting the light. It was as though the silvery craft was glass-like, with the light moving under the surface like a lava lamp. Peniston reached out and touched the craft. As he ran his hand along it, it was smooth as glass, except for where the symbols were etched into the surface. That, according to him, felt coarse and rough like sand. All of a sudden, it rose above the trees, and once it cleared the trees, it took off into the night sky at impossible speed. This is where Burroughs' account ended up changing. Before, he claimed to see the same object Peniston saw, but soon after he changed his story. He claimed that when they both hit the ground after the explosion of the light, all he saw was a reddish light. The light was blinding and masked everything behind it. While Peniston's experience lasted a couple minutes, Burroughs' experience lasted mere seconds before the light rose from the forest floor and disappeared into the night. Both men looked down on the ground and saw 3 indentations in the frozen ground, suggesting that though they both had different experiences, something had happened. But that is not the strangest thing. When the two were headed back, I want you all to remember they were out of radio contact as the radios had stopped working. According to their watches they wore, they were gone for only 10 minutes. But when they reached the others, still waiting for them, they realized they had been gone 45 minutes. Their watches were running 45 minutes slower than the others. Whatever they seen that night was powerful enough to affect time around them. Charles Holt was a deputy commander in charge of RAF Woodridge. On December 28th, he was attending a Christmas party at the base when a young soldier rushed in to tell him the lights were back. Holt decided to try to find anyone who was sober and of strong mind to come with him to investigate the original site. He was someone who was tired of hearing the stories of Burroughs and Peniston and wanted to debunk it as well. He brought a tape recorder with him, and 18 minutes of the 5-hour audio is available to listen to, so we can listen to it here.
150 feet or more from the initial, I should say, suspected impact point. Having a little difficulty, we can't get the light all to work. Seems to be some kind of mechanical problem. Let's send it back and get another light on. Meantime, we're going to take some readings at the Geiger and chase around here a little bit, waiting for another light on to come back in. Standing up. Security control. That's one of the pod number. Okay, we're now approaching area within about 25-30 feet. What kind of readings are we getting? Anything? Just minor clicks. Minor clicks. Yes, now I'm getting some residual. I can read down. The meter's definitely giving pulse. Okay, that's what I was going to say. Let's go to the center of the area next and see what kind of reading we get out there. You're reading the clicks. I can't hear the clicks. Yes, got them up the center, Bruce? Yes. Okay, let's go to the center. Yes, I get it. That's the best deflection needle I've seen yet. Okay, can you give me an estimation? We're on the 0.5 scale. We're getting... We have a couple readings.
At approximately 01:25 hours. We're getting right at a half of a middle right now.
Nice point. I haven't seen it go any higher.
While looking over the original landing site, another light appeared in the sky, one that was red in color.
There's been a pigmentation.
You just saw a light where?
Sir.
Wait, slow down. Where?
Right in this position here, straight ahead, in between the tree. There it is again. Watch, straight ahead off my flashlight there, sir. There it is.
Hey, I see it too. What is it?
We don't know, sir.
So can I get some of it? Yeah, it's a strange, small red light. Looks to be out maybe a quarter to half mile, maybe further out. I'm going to switch off. The light is gone now. It was approximately 120 degrees from the site. Is it back again?
Yes, sir.
Oh, that's the flashlight set. Let's move out to the edge of the clearing so we can get a better look at it. See if you can get the star scope on it. The light's still there, and all the barnyard animals have gotten quiet now. Yeah, we're heading about 110 to 120 degrees from the site out through to the clearing now. Still getting a reading on the meter. About 2 clicks. Meter's jumped 3 to 4 clicks, getting stronger.
As he was seeing this light, remember, he was also investigating the original landing site. There he found 3 indentations in the frozen ground, suggesting something had landed with enough force to push the ground down.
There's still barnyard. Okay, we'll go out toward the... Now it's picking up. This is out toward the number 1 indentation where we first got the strongest reading. Yeah, it's similar to what we got in the center.
In a pond. This may be in the center. It looks like an area here, possibly. It could be a blast. It's in the center.
It's hard to tell. You got to take this. My finger's about to freeze.
Here, too. Up to what, 7? What? Just jumped up to 7/10 there.
7/10 right there in the center? Uh-huh.
Picking up some of your collection.
Let me see that. Well, that's kind of funny. You're right about the abrasion. I've never seen a tree that's, never seen a pine tree that's been damaged react that fast.
I got a bottle to put that in.
Yeah, you got a sample bottle?
Just go ahead through the soil and put the plant somewhere.
Yeah, here, sit this on the ground.
Oh, thank you. I can notice they're all the same.
Okay, from now on, let's identify that as point number 1.
We are getting some.
You're getting readings on the tree you're taking samples from on the side facing the suspected landing site.
4 clicks max.
Up to 4. Interesting. That's right where you're taking the sample now. 4. That's the strongest point on the tree?
Yes, sir. If you come to the back, there's no clicks whatsoever.
No clicks at all on the back. It's all on the
Maybe one
side
or two.
facing the... Interesting. The indentations look like something twisted as it got, as it sat down on them. Looks like someone took something and sat it down and twisted it from side to side. You said there's a positive after effect?
Yes, there is definitely. That's on the center spot. There is an after effect. What does that mean? It means when the lights are turned off, once we are focused in and allow time for the eyes to adjust, we are getting an indication of a heat source coming out of that center spot.
There were scorch marks on trees facing the landing zone. They took samples of the soil and samples of the tree. They had a Geiger counter with them, and it was reading peak readings inside the landing zone. But this was interrupted by the light that was in the sky that I mentioned.
We just run to the first nightbird we've seen. We're about 150 or 200 yards from the site. Everything else is just deathly calm. There's no doubt about it. There's some type of strange flashing red light ahead.
It's yellow.
I saw a yellow tinge in it too. Weird. It appears to be maybe moving a little bit this way. It's brighter than it has been.
Yellow.
It's coming this way. It is definitely coming this way. Pieces of it are shooting off. There is no doubt about it. This is weird.
To the left.
Yeah, definitely moving left.
Two lights. One light to the front,
Okay.
one light to the left.
Keep the flashlights off. There's something very, very strange. Keep the headset on. See if it gets any stronger. Okay. Give us a rundown.
Notation that this is on the beta reading, too.
It's on the beta reading?
The beta
Okay.
shield has been removed.
Okay. This is we're falling off it again.
And it just moved to the right.
Yeah.
Off to the right.
Strange. Okay, we're looking at the thing. We're probably about 200 to 300 yards away. It looks like an eye winking at you. It's still moving from side to side. And when you put the star scope on it, it sort of has a hollow center, or a dark center. It's like the pupil of an eye looking at you and winking. And the flash is so bright to the star scope that it almost burns your eye. We passed the farmer's house and across in the next field. Now we have multiple sightings of up to 5 lights with a similar shape and all, but they seem to be steady now rather than a pulsating or glow with a red flash. We just crossed the creek, and we're getting what kind of readings now? Getting 3 good clicks on the meter, and we're seeing strange lights in the sky. 244, we're at the far side of the second farmer's field, and made sighting again about 110 degrees. This looks like it's clear out to the coast. It's right on the horizon. Moves about a bit and flashes from time to time. Still steady or red in color. Also, after negative readings in the center of the field, we're picking up slight readings, 4 or 5 clicks now on the meter.
At one point, Holt claimed that the light became pencil thin and radiated out like a laser, the beam hitting harmlessly on the ground 10 feet from him. Then the light took off over the base, where the light again radiated a beam straight down onto the base. While this was going on, Burroughs had another encounter. While Holt ordered Burroughs to be kept away, once Burroughs heard another light had been seen, he got into a Jeep with another soldier to track it down. They found the light, and it seemed to come straight at the Jeep. They stopped the Jeep and Burroughs got out. As he walked towards the light, it seemed to engulf him, and for minutes, the other soldier couldn't see him. But the light disappeared, and Burroughs was just down the road in front of the Jeep. Nothing had happened to him. He was just standing there bewildered. Holt would create a memo for the UK government, but he wouldn't send it out until a little under a month later. The reason why it was so late seems to be that Holt wanted to make sure that it wasn't just seen as a prank or a bunch of drunk soldiers seeing things. So he was careful in what he wrote. He did not give names of any parties involved. He chose his words closely. He even downplayed the significance of it, calling the event Unexplained Lights. Holt has been on record as saying the reason for the slowness of the report was that he knew that the UK would have to investigate it, but he felt as though he didn't want the spotlight on the base at that point. It could make the US Air Force look bad in his mind. The UK government did investigate the claims, but Holt did mess up. He listed the date of the first encounter as December 27th. The UK ended up feeling like, because of the lateness of the memo and the date of the first encounter being wrong, that it wasn't that important. When they did investigate, it seemed more like they wanted to try to explain away what happened that night and cover it up. Because of the date of the first encounter was wrong on the memo, the UK government's investigation ran into an issue. They had to first realize that everything that happened on the first encounter was a day earlier, and thus the second encounter happening 2 days later, which means they had to correctly scour records, where those investigating stated that they found that the radar that the servicemen claimed caught sight of the aircraft coming towards the base was actually shut off that night. Whether it was actually shut off that night or not is up for debate. The UK's stance was it was off. The US Air Force's stance is it was on. But both the UK and the US governments kinda didn't really want to investigate it. The UK wanted the US to investigate it, and the US wanted the UK to investigate it. And well, it pretty much was discarded to be forgotten by history, which if you kinda couldn't tell, it really wasn't. So it really wasn't a cover-up, as no one really wanted to investigate it to begin with. It was more like, let's just hope this stupid shit disappears already. In fact, the UK government concluded that what the servicemen saw that night was a light from a nearby lighthouse, which I am not even going to attempt to pronounce the name of that lighthouse, because even though I speak English, I'm American. I speak bad English. So the problem with the lighthouse theory is this. These men would have been used to seeing that light from the lighthouse. They had been stationed there for a while. I highly doubt someone like Holt would mistake a lighthouse light for a light in the forest. To me, it seems a little bit of a stretch. The best two explanations are ones I mentioned earlier. On the 26th of December, a Russian satellite fell out of orbit and broke up in the atmosphere, sending burning debris into the countryside below. Also, a meteor entered Earth's atmosphere that night, which will explain the lights in the sky, but not the accounts of Burroughs and Peniston, unless they made that stuff up. I want to remind you, the second encounter alone, 80 people saw. All servicemen. This doesn't account for those in Suffolk who saw something. And yet their government and the US government didn't do much of a job looking into this or taking it seriously. The reason why? Both governments didn't think the incident warranted a threat to national security. But this is just the beginning of the weirdness of this event. Burroughs and Peniston both suffered PTSD from this encounter, but while they were both in the military, they both decided to keep their mouths shut about what they saw. The reason being simple. They didn't want to be mocked and ridiculed by the public. Peniston himself felt like something more was wrong with him besides PTSD. He felt that when he touched the craft, something was downloaded into his mind, and that is the best way I can describe it. Once in a while, he would see visions of ones and zeros. He was seeing binary code. Peniston decided to come to terms with these visions visions and to figure out what they mean. He wrote them down in a notebook, writing down the sequence. Then one day, the visions stopped. After the visions stopped, he started to feel better. He put the notebook away for 30 years. Then one day, when talking to another person about the craft, he mentioned he drew the craft in a notebook. He got it out and showed the person, who inquired about the binary code that Peniston wrote down. The person informed Peniston that it was in fact binary code, and that a computer could decipher it. So the code was analyzed, and what it revealed was shocking. A message was translated, and it read, "Exploration of humanity, continuous for planetary advance. Eyes of our eyes. Origin year 8100. Below the message was a list of coordinates that match up to sacred sites like the Pyramid of Giza, the Nazca Lines, and the Temple of Apollo. There were more than just those ones listed, but I just wanted to simplify it. So either at one point Peniston learned binary code, or something happened to him. There are some theories on what this could be. But before I start, I want everyone to know I have a naturally skeptical mind. While I am reading these out, realize I'm trying to remain unbiased towards any of them. I wasn't there that night, obviously. I wasn't even born yet. So I don't agree with one theory over any of the others. But I do nerd out at least once with one of them. So let's start with the obvious, that this was all a hoax, perpetrated by a bunch of people who were stationed at a base. That what Holt saw on the second night was the lighthouse. But because 2 nights earlier Burroughs and Peniston saw something they couldn't explain, it became a coincidence. That the indentations left by the craft were just rabbit holes. The issue with just dismissing this is these are soldiers, and this is a time where talking about UFOs will just earn you ridicule and shame. If any of the soldiers did just want to share their story for fame and fortune, they did a pretty bad job of it, because none of them have wanted anything to do with this for years. While Peniston, Holt, and Burroughs have talked to people about it, they seem more like they want nothing to do with it. Peniston himself states that he still suffers from PTSD because of this incident. But let's say they did see something that night. Maybe it was debris from a Russian satellite or the meteor. Well, that means Burroughs and Peniston came up with a fancy story for what was out there that night. Again, other than Burroughs changing his story to that he didn't see a craft, Peniston, Holt, and Burroughs all have remained consistent about what they saw. And again, during this time, talk of UFOs or aliens would get somebody ridiculed, because the topic was seen as just science fiction and not reality. With those out of the way, let's talk about some other theories. First being the standard alien visitation. After the atomic bomb tests during World War II, there was a spike in UFO sightings. It seemed when we discovered nuclear power, either 1, we became more imaginative, or 2, we gained the attention of something not of this world. In fact, a lot of sightings happen where nukes are stored and nuclear power plants, leading to the theory that aliens are interested in nuclear energy. It is thought that the bases might have hidden some nukes, though neither the US or the UK will confirm or deny this. The theory is, aliens interested in nuclear material stop by to check it out. But the thing is, Peniston doesn't think that this is the case. He thinks it's something else. He thinks that the craft he saw wasn't extraterrestrial. He thinks it was a time machine. Look back at the binary that he claimed to have in his visions. Look at the message. Exploration of humanity, continuous for planetary advance. Eyes of our eyes. Origin year 8100. Origin year 8100. Peniston believes that the craft was sent from the future. Basically, humanity has learned to travel through time and is cataloging our history from the distant future, which is mind-blowing. And with our understandings of physics right now, is completely impossible. And quite frankly, this theory seems more ludicrous than all the others. Makes you just want to get out your tinfoil hat. But time is not linear. Time moves forwards and backwards. Our understanding of time right now is what we can observe, which is time passing. But let me remind you of something about time that I think will put things into perspective. Something that I cannot comprehend and most can't. When you look up into the night sky, you're seeing light from the past. Closer objects like the planets that we can see with the naked eye, light reaches us in minutes. But the stars farthest from us, the light emitting from them can be up to thousands of years old, meaning light just getting here from the farthest stars left that star when we were in the Middle Ages, or the Bronze Age, or even when the dinosaurs roamed the Earth. This is why it might not be far-fetched to think an advanced civilization from a distant future could develop a way of traveling through time. I really hope that makes sense. I have to admit, physics is not my best subject. I just know time travel is a complicated subject, and going faster than light is a component of it in theoretical physics. My brain is just too dumb to put it properly. I thought of cutting this part out, but be entertained by my dumbass trying to explain physics. I just find the time travel theory interesting. Far-fetched, but interesting. I love sci-fi, so it piqued my interest. I will say I have no idea what the servicemen saw that night. I do not like to immediately claim that it was something fake without substantial evidence to prove that it was fake. And to be clear, due to how the investigation was handled by both the UK and the US governments, this doesn't have evidence to sway me to one side or the other. But what I do know is this: I doubt we're alone in the universe. I also think it's not a stretch of the imagination to think that intelligent life has visited this planet before. But whether they did on December 26th and December 28th of 1980 in a forest in the UK comes down to who you wish to believe. It comes down to if you wish to believe that Holt, Peniston, and Burroughs had an encounter with something that wasn't from this world, or something that could easily be explained away as a mixture of a hoax and misidentification. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, and subscribe. If you wish to support me, I have memberships activated and a Patreon. Links in the description. Till then,